Welcome back here today on the beautiful campus of Florida Panhandle Technical College. Another in our series of Meet the Candidates. Our guest today is Tracy Andrews, currently running for Chipley City Council Ward 3. Tracy is here for her second visit. She made her initial visit a couple of weeks ago. As we do with all candidates in every race and every political cycle, we offer the candidate an opportunity to come on the first time, introduce themselves, sort of give us a thumbnail sketch of who they are and why they want your vote. Subsequent follow-up visits are usually a little more interesting. We can sort of drill down. We can talk about things that are a little bit off topic, talk maybe a little bit more about the area instead of just their candidacy. In any case, when we come back, we're going to talk to Tracy about all the reasons that she is running for that Ward 3 City Council seat in Chipley, Florida, and why she perhaps deserves your vote. We'll be right back. Welcome back. As mentioned, our guest today is Tracy Andrews, candidate for Ward 3 City Council seat in Chipley, Florida. Thanks for coming back.
Glad to be here, sir.
You were a little bit nervous the first time. You feel a little bit more comfortable this time?
Much better this time, yes, sir.
You mentioned to me that you had a lot of people mention that they saw your interview even before you saw it, and that you got some rave reviews, and that people said that you presented yourself well, so that's all good. The second visit, as I said in the introduction, Tracy, we sort of like to drill down a little bit, talk a little bit about obviously your candidacy, but a little bit more about the overall picture. We find ourselves in Chipley, Florida, a relatively small town, rural town in the northwest, the part of northwest Florida that is extremely rural. Washington County being a very large, relatively poor county, not unlike its neighbors, but Chipley is the county seat. So that gives a little more prominence to Chipley, a little more weight to the decisions that they make as a city, and also the most beautiful place in the world as far as I'm concerned. For over 30 years, we lived in Panama City Beach. 12 years ago, moved up here. We live here on purpose. We don't live here because somebody left us a house and we can't afford to go somewhere else. We don't live here because we're trying to take care of relatives. We could move anywhere that we want, and our kids and grandkids are scattered all over the place. But we live here for several reasons. It's a beautiful place. The natural resources are pristine and abundant. Great people, great transportation. If we want to go somewhere else, just as all the residents here, it's very simple because we have good state and interstate highways. You've got a rail system here. We're not far from a deep water port. If you're in business, it's a great place. I say all that to say that you are a lifelong resident of Chipley, and through conversation with you, I get the idea that you are definitely invested in volunteerism. You give back to the community, whether it's the New Vision group, whether it's sitting on some of the boards for the county or city. Let's talk a little bit, for those who didn't see the first portion of our interview. Who is Tracy Andrews? Talk a little bit about your history, your heritage, your family, and ultimately why you want to run for this office.
A little bit about myself. My parents are Tommy and Janetta Andrews. My grandmother is also living here. Her name is Ida Mae Cotton. She will turn 90 in October. So
well, happy birthday to her.
Happy birthday, Grandma. And so I've born and raised here in Chipley. Always had a desire to live here in Chipley. My upbringing and my growing up here in Chipley has been positive. I had a wonderful life growing up with the school system, enjoyed going to school. Classmates, we had a very small class, maybe 86 or so.
86 in your graduating class?
Maybe 86.
That is a small class.
For the class of 1986, about 86
wow.
or so. But we were just all interconnected. We grew up there at Cadam Smith, and so you have a bond. And I didn't know how I was going to respond after high school graduation, because I've been with this group of seniors for such a time, and then we go off to our separate place. But it's just been a pleasure living here. growing up in the church has been a part of my heritage. Very strong believer, of course, and very engaged in the church and in any church in this community. Wherever there's a service or there's a need, it doesn't matter that it's not my home church. I just enjoy being able to help others. And so a part of me is just the fact that a servant, I guess I've always fell into the role of being a servant first. And I thought that when you grow up as a leader, it's always a good attribute to be a genuine, true servant and to understand the value of serving.
You work with the group New Vision.
Yes, I do.
I was fortunate enough to be asked to moderate a series of political forums, debates, if you will, a couple of years ago, or I guess in this last election cycle, really. It was just last calendar year, actually, now that I think about it. And I met a lot of your members. It was a warm opportunity to be embraced by a part of the community that typically I would not have that ability to do so. Talk a little bit about what is New Vision and what you guys do.
New Vision started many years ago. Of course, I was not the founder of New Vision, but was quickly asked to be the president of New Vision. And at that time, I gladly accepted that position as president. So what we do, our mission is pretty much is to educate and to promote or to enhance educational and economic opportunities for all people. And so we have been in our communities working with the educational system as far as back to school drive that we just recently had at Northwest Florida. We serve as a partner for that. We want to be able to give back and to help those families with their school supplies. Within the community, we also go around and urge the importance of being a registered voter, and how you actually came up to be the actually presenter for our forum that we had. Was I attended several forums at the Vance Theater, and I thought it was important that we had one within that community there at TJ Rolak Enrichment Center for the people in that community, to bring those candidates there to so they can make a educational decision about who to vote for. And so that is what we're all about, is we're trying to help families, help people, and to be a part of this community.
Yeah, you mentioned the Rolak Center. You're very fortunate to really have that infrastructure still there in place. Interestingly, the grant process is moving along pretty rapidly to replace the Washington County Ag Center. And I'm kind of curious, I haven't had conversation with any county officials about this, but I'm kind of curious if when that Ag Center is demolished and the new one in place, and that process will take a while. So there's going to be a period of time when there literally is no assembly place in Washington County except for TJ Rolak. It's going to be interesting to see if at that time perhaps some improvements get made, and that because of the additional use of it, there's an opportunity to enhance that facility. It's actually quite a nice facility.
It is.
That's the one of the few times that I've been in that building. And it's large, it's got a great stage, and it's got the history and heritage of the local school system. You can almost smell it takes you back to your high school days. It takes you back to your
middle school days.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's a really good thing for you guys and for New Vision, because you do have the use of that opportunity. Forrest Smith, who now heads up the West Florida Baptist Association, actually used the gym there for a good period of time. And had an after-school basketball program. And he used that as an opportunity to share his testimony and to sort of have an outreach program. And he said he got to reach a lot of the younger generation just by being able to have them in that non-threatening environment, shooting hoops, having candid conversation. Is that campus there used for anything else nowadays? There's
an after-school program there that runs when school's in place, and so they use that for after school, and we utilize it just for our meeting place for our organization, New Vision. But there's plenty of rooms that's occupied. I believe there's a church, Reverend Blunt's church is there as well. So there's multiple purpose. There's a free clinic that Dr. Valdez Sheffield runs there at that center. So
wow,
there's great opportunities out there. at the TJ Rolex.
I was unaware that Dr. Sheffield had that outreach clinic there. Maybe at some point you can hook us up and I can come over there and interview her and maybe kind of see a little bit of what she does. I think the community would be very interested in hearing about that. Is that a possibility somewhere down the road?
Yes, sir. I'll be glad to do that. I'll make sure I touch base with her today.
The Chipley City Council, not unlike other sitting councils for municipalities around here, is made up of a 5-member panel. You have 4 wards in Chipley, wards 1 through 4, and you have a representative from each of those, and then you have an at-large representative, and those 5 people make up that sitting city council.
That's right.
Once the election, which happens every 2 years and replacing either 2 or 3 respectively in each of those cycles, then those 5 members decide who will be mayor. Is that a situation where somebody makes a motion and then you vote on it? Do you know how that operation works?
I was there when for the last one, and I'm not sure what leads up to that, if there's some type of workshop or whatever it is that happens. I'm not privy to that. But from what I could gather, for that particular meeting, there's a motion that's made and it's voted on amongst the group.
So you've got that 4 sitting members plus the mayor. As in all organizations that are governed by either Robert's Rules of Order or parliamentary procedure, that mayor, that figurehead, does not actually have the ability to make a motion or to vote unless there's a tie, but that person does represent the city. For instance, in the Florida League of Cities.
That's right.
Other organizations which deal with those municipalities. We have 5 municipalities in Washington County. You've got Vernon, Ebro, Caryville, Chipley, and Wausau. Recently, as a matter of fact, Trey Hawkins, our Washington County Commissioner, organized a series of meetings in 20-minute intervals that met with all 5 of those municipalities at the county annex. What is the relationship right now of Chipley in cooperative partnerships, if you will, even though you're not physically close to any of those? What, if any, if you're aware, do you have in the way of relationships with all of those other municipalities?
I believe that the current council would have an open mind to being a part of meeting with the other municipalities to talk and to brainstorm and come together. I just believe that in moving forward, that's just a wise thing to do. So I believe they're open to it because I think there was a meeting on last week and we were there represented from the Chipley area for a meeting.
Yeah, and the only reason for that question is I'm not trying to put you on the hot seat, but it seems like there would be some collective bargaining opportunities. For instance, I know that when you go for a grant to get a new infrastructure, a water system, waste treatment, whatever, that's specific to your municipality. But when you're buying fire hose or when you're buying some kind of equipment, it would seem like there'd be opportunities that you could buy in bulk and recognize some values. And
there is value in that because there's that allows us to come together and we can share best practices on things that's working well for us, the different vendors that we're using that they may not be aware of. And so anytime a project comes about, if we need a new fire truck, then Sunny Hills may be looking at the same, or Caryville, or whoever may be looking at doing something, and we can come together and say, hey, let's order 2 instead of 1, and we can get a certain discount for having that bulk, so to speak, order in. But I believe there's a lot of value in spending time with the others here in the Washington County.
Chipley has a very robust recreational life. We have Powell's Park. Powell's Park is the scene of the Panhandle Watermelon Festival Friday night concerts. It's the scene, obviously, or location for all of those sports that use the ball fields. And then we have the old Chipley High School, which that gym is still used for the City League basketball. That's still a beautiful building.
It is.
There have been conversations lately about county versus city and how that sports stuff fleshes out. Are you aware of some of that? You can kind of keep up with that?
Some of it. At our Kiwanis forum, there, our debate there, Mr. Hawkins was there, and he shed some light on working together and having those conversations, how we can blend certain programs to work smarter, not harder, and still be able to satisfy the needs of our youth here in the communities.
Probably one of those issues which will be a focus after your election going forward, because it seems to be a hot topic. According to Trey Hawkins, there's an relatively easy fix for it.
It is.
It's a matter of deciding if you're going to work within the framework of what you have to work and then doing it. But so that'll be just one of those things that you're going to have to deal with. What other hot buttons do there seem to be these days? I know Splash Pad, for instance, is an opportunity to have some fun listening to the argument, certainly.
And just my browsing through the community and talking with different groups, we find that we're in need of perhaps maybe a recreational center, a place where you can have not a closed facility for basketball, but maybe just, the actual court itself and the goals, or a little tennis area. So I think just having the little recreational areas throughout the community would help, because everyone's not going to play basketball, but everyone's not going to play softball or baseball. So we have to give a variety of other options for our youth as well.
Yeah, we've got the opportunity. I call it shivers, you call it shivers. There's a 50-50 split. I'm not going to get into that argument, but I have been reprimanded and scolded time after time by people who call it shivers. So I'm going to stick with that, recognizing the fact that there is an alternate way to say it. So we're not going to talk about the argument over the name. But whatever you want to call it, that is a gorgeous facility. It's really the jewel of Chipley, and a lot of people don't even know it exists right there. It's in a residential neighborhood surrounded by residential, but the Art Canoe Festival by Early Learning Coalition is held there. The Easter egg hunt is held there. There are just a number of art. Plus, it's open to the public. People can use the pavilions. It's kind of unusual sometimes to have as well-maintained and as easily accessible a facility as Powell's Park. We're really lucky to have that.
We're fortunate to have Powell's Park. And even at the Shivers Park, we have the walking park. And I utilize that. I love that piece of it. And it's a well-lit area. Because it's in a neighborhood, there's some comfort there as well. And so the neighbors are very friendly, and it just makes me feel like I'm in a much secure place as far as walking.
And I always overlook that because obviously I don't do a lot of walking. But speaking of those walking tracks, the Northwest Florida Community Hospital also has a walking track that circumscribes their property, if that's the right word. We've got great opportunities. Chipley has school system.
Yes.
We've got a brand new Kate Smith Elementary School. We've got a brand new courthouse. But we also have a high school and a middle school. We've got a very nice hospital, one that is certainly upgrading all the time.
Yes.
Has much to be proud of. Chipley has everything going for it. I can't help but think the next 15, 20, 25 years are just rosy as long as we're prudent and do the right things right here in Chipley.
Exactly. I believe over the time that we've paid attention, we've made the upgrades and improvements, and this is the end result of what you're seeing here, is that people that are willing to make the sacrifice and make those necessary changes, because the needs of the people are changing every day, and so they're doing everything they can to accommodate those needs as well.
You mentioned your skill set and what you bring to the table. As a part of Chipley, I do have a vested interest in what goes on in Chipley. I care. As a taxpayer in Chipley, in Washington County, in Florida, I care about all of those, but most intimately, I live in the city of Chipley. There seem to be different schools of thought about how things should be done. That's not just healthy, but necessary when you live in a republic such as ours. But there does seem to be some divisiveness or some difference of opinion over time amongst that sitting board, not unlike any other elected board. What do you bring to the table as that city council person to be a peacemaker, to help to foster an atmosphere of cooperative partnerships amongst those 5 elected officials versus when sometimes things just don't seem to be gelling or coming together the way that they should. What do you bring to the table going forward that will enhance the opportunities of the city as that elected official?
I believe that you should be a part of the solution versus the problem. And so when you come in to deal with any type of meeting or setting, I'm coming in for the betterment of the city of Chipley. What can we do to improve the city of Chipley? And all personal opinions and personal feelings always should be put aside. It is a organization, it's a business. What's in the best interest? So what I bring is the fact that I am a very positive person, but there's times where you have to dig in to get a solution for whatever the problem. And we may not all agree on the same thing. We have the right to disagree. But at the end of the day, what is going to be in the best interest of Chipley? And I will stand behind it 100%. And I believe that at the end of the day, when we leave, then that's a closed subject. That's closure. If it was a 3-2 vote, then the majority rule, I comply to what was agreed upon. And so my attitude or my response is that, I leave away. Everything is going to be great for the city of Chipley. And so that's what I bring. I don't want to be a part of confusion. That's not me. That's not a part of my character. I'm all about the peace.
Well said. When does the city council in Chipley meet?
They meet, we have a workshop, and the workshop is that Thursday prior to the meeting, which is the second Tuesday of the month.
So they have one meeting a month and one workshop a month?
Yes.
Okay.
And the workshop is optional. Sometimes there may not be, but maybe 1 or 2 agenda items, and there may be a notice that's sent out, and then the bulletin board, the marquee will also indicate if that workshop's been canceled.
Well, we'd certainly encourage people to attend those meetings. What kind of attendance generally do those meetings have?
Just being there, you probably would have less than 20 citizens.
Sometimes it's hard to understand how people can complain. Number one, if they don't have all the facts, and unless you're at a meeting,
exactly.
Unless you're at some sort of assemblage where some things are discussed or said, that doesn't keep people from complaining about them online or elsewhere when they don't have all the facts, unfortunately. So just to get 20 people or so show up to meetings, that is kind of a shame. Mm-hmm. Maybe once you get there, you can come up with creative ways to get the voters more engaged. Our system is such that if I vote for you, you have my proxy vote. Just like when I vote for president, he has my proxy vote. He is then president. I don't feel, just like if I were voting for you for city council person, that I have to attend every meeting to make sure the city council is voting the way I want them to. Having given you my proxy as having voted for you, I am going to presume, and hopefully my vote for you was based on the fact that I trust you as a person, that the best possible outcome is going to be arrived. And I'm not going to agree with everything that goes on, just like you're not going to win every argument in a city council chamber. But at the end of the day, we all hope that we're best represented. And that's why we have a representative form of government. Sometimes we forget that.
And that's very important. And so that goes along with being visible and being the voice for the people, especially within the ward that you serve or for the city as a whole. Definitely wouldn't turn anyone away, but for the ones, particularly in Ward 3, I would want to make sure that I'm engaged with that community or those people so that I can understand and so that I can communicate information back.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that about Ward 3. When people come out to vote, they don't vote on a single-member district basis. All voters in the city vote for all members of the council. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
We've talked about the easy stuff. Let's get into a little deeper water here.
Okay.
Tell me what you bring to the table, Tracy Andrews, that makes you qualified and the best choice for that Ward 3 City Council seat.
What I bring to the table, I guess you would say, is an open mind to change. I understand that I live here. I've seen some things in my time, and my willingness to embrace and adapt to changes and to adapt to improvements is one of the key attributes that I have. Besides the fact that I'm a willing worker, I believe I have the educational background with the years of experience with work. It plays a major part in who I am. And so I'm just ready to be able to go in, step in day one and say, what can I do? I'll take on that. I'll be glad to do that. And I take things very wholeheartedly serious. If I'm given a task, I want to make sure that I'm accounted for and that I'm represented. So I bring to the table a person that's humble, but have a very strong work ethic.
What are your weaknesses? What does Tracy need to improve about her personally?
Probably saying no sometimes. I think I say yes a lot, and sometimes it is very healthy, and it's okay to say no. And maybe sometimes from my lenses, I see things as good. I always try to find the positive in everything, and many times I exit out the negative. But sometimes I need to consider the negative, to look at the negative too, because there's some reasons why the negative's there, and just analyze things for how it really is.
Recognizing that although you have been attending city council meetings for some time, you're still not privy to some of the books, the facts and figures, the budget numbers, the internal problems, and anyone running for an office who is not that incumbent would be ignorant of those things. Recognizing that, though, what do you see as one of the major problems that Chipley's going to have to deal with going forward?
Well, I would say that we have to consider, when it comes to the employees, we have to look at how, and that's a piece of it I think no one wants to really talk about, is how can we look at competitive wages, and let's look at what we can do to make sure that not only the citizens are happy, but we also have a healthy, happy balance as far as the employees as well. And to be able to compete and say, hey, we're able to retain some of the best workers there is because the salary was not an issue.
When you say competitive wages, you're saying that the city workers, the city needs to figure out a way to pay the city workers more.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and that's a challenge because you only have but so many citizens here. I think our base for the city of Chipley is roughly 4,000. So you have to work with, there's some barriers. There's some things you're going to have to consider. But we also have to continue to stay in the fight and look for ways to improve consistently.
What are potential revenue sources? Obviously, it's a zero-sum game. If you stay the way it is today, collecting the taxes that you collect, which, by the way, in all fairness, Chipley has one of the highest tax rates of any municipality around, certainly right up there with them. You don't want to introduce new taxes.
No.
You only have to work with what you have. So therefore, the only way you can improve is by finding new money sources, finding new monies, finding new business. What are there opportunities in Chipley to bring in business so that tax base is improved and you can pay more wages? What are our opportunities as far as bringing in new businesses?
Well, I think there's some things in place because you've already have the county talking about things, and then you have our chamber and our economic development council that geared up totally to look at ways in which we can bring in new business, new industry growth here within not just the city of Chipley, but Washington County as a whole. So I believe that they're spinning their wheels working to determine ways. And there's just a few things that we're going to have to work out. But I believe they have a game plan already in place, and it's just to jump in and try to work that plan as quickly as we can to get those numbers where we need them.
A number of years ago, one of the sitting city councilmen at that time made the comment that he was totally against giving ad valorem tax breaks to a business to come into the city, and that they should want to come in of their own volition, and the city, as far as he was concerned, was not willing to give those tax breaks. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts is we have to be a little bit more creative. So if it means going back to the drawing board and saying, hey, why? Or at this particular time, this is where we were, this is where we are now. Is that feasible for us to do that? Is there a compromise? Is there a better suggestion to do that? I think many times without knowing all the ins and outs about that agreement, that we may have to revisit some ordinances or some things that's in place and say, is this a better way? Is there a better way?
Looking at downtown Chipley, one of the things that really attracted us was the fact that you had an old historic downtown. What has more charm, and whether the railroad passenger trains are running it or not, to have that railroad system in downtown, historic monuments, parks, it's just a quaint, beautiful place. But that's where it ends, because those things all have costs associated, and you got to figure out a way to not just maintain that, but then continue to build. Downtown, arguably, from my point of view, downtown Chipley has fewer storefronts that are filled with businesses today than they did 3 or 4 years ago. 3 or 4 years ago, they had more than they had had 3 or 4 or 5 years prior to that. So I know everything is cyclical, and things happen in direct correlation to what's happening statewide and certainly nationally. But right now, it seems that Chipley is at an all-time low, at least in my experience, as far as buildings which are not being used, businesses located in downtown, and those businesses not being there, not attracting the foot traffic, except when there's a festival or parade, to downtown Chipley. What are your thoughts about revitalizing? I know there's a CRA in place and they do their own thing, so we won't talk about that right now. But what are Tracy Andrews' thoughts about what can be done to reinvent downtown if necessary, but to put a spotlight on downtown, have people want to come here both for their business and then subsequently just as a place to come for a recreational point of view? When
I look at the downtown area, there's so much potential there, and I won't get into the CRA, but I know some conversations are going to need to take place from my standpoint, just to visualize that area. Definitely, maybe some places is there where you can actually go eat for dinner time, for say, and just make that more of a pedestrian-friendly grid system in that area, so you can still go to downtown and have that downtown feel. So definitely more eating places down there. Maybe some more shops, whether they're clothing shops. We've got accessory shops down there. We have some health shop that's there. And what can we do to bring some of our smaller shops there, make it more affordable so that they can come or relocate to that particular area? We see in some of the other cities, they have little plazas branched off in different locations. And we can also have, not for say like a plaza there, but we can have the little walk-in stores. You can walk from store to store to store to store. And I still visualize that taking place. There's some business offices there, some engineering firms that's there. We lost our downtown theater that was there, but nevertheless, Ms. Potts is doing an excellent job with having an event or occasion place there. So there's also a place there available for special events.
In all fairness, the CRA has provided funding. You mentioned the Vance Theater, the Habitat for Humanity Restore building,
yes,
which at one time was the antique shop downtown. Both of those have taken advantage of CRA grants. Plus, there have been a lot of other buildings that have gotten new roofs or new facades on their building.
Yes.
There have been a lot of improvement there. However, I haven't seen anything along that line since the Vance, and that's been a couple of years now. And I dare say there's been much at all in the last 3 or 4 years. So I would encourage you, once you are elected, to kind of start paying a little more attention to the CRA. The city, at the end of the day, administers the CRA, and sometimes I've seen people scratching their head or not. They're not being the kind of oversight that, in my uneducated view, now I don't know all that there is, but it just appears that there could be more oversight there to ensure that something is done. Once you're elected, we'll be having some follow-up discussions, perhaps.
Wonderful.
And, despite all of that I seem to be saying negatively, I also started this conversation about downtown with the fact that I believe it's just a gorgeous place, and it's certainly one of the major reasons that we live here. So that said, hopefully going forward, we can just start doing one small project at a time. It seems like when something is proposed, it gets so blown out of proportion. For instance, the splash pad. At one time, somebody wanted to do a splash pad echoing maybe something similar to what Marietta has, and now they have two. Bonifay Wausau had just got a grant to have one. I'm not going to argue whether or not there should be a splash pad. But when a splash pad was proposed, all of a sudden it became a Disney World with inordinately high costs, and immediately everybody threw up their hands and said, maybe that was done on purpose just to circumvent the issue. I don't know. I'm not suggesting anything. All I'm saying is that let's do some small things that make sense and move forward. I'm going to give you the opportunity to look right into the camera lens there and talk to all of those 3,600 people that live in Chipley, who knows how many of them registered voters, but to tell them, Tracy, in your own words, exactly why they should vote for you come Tuesday, August 1st.
Well, I'm asking you right now for your vote for the citizens here in the city of Chipley. I am very dedicated, loyal to my community. I love this community. I plan on retiring and living here until I leave. And I need your vote. I want to make a difference here in the city of Chipley. I'm available, I'm accessible, I am willing, and I enjoy being a part of this area. I love Chipley. It brings a sense of family, community to me in more ways than one. We're several, as I said, families within one family. I need your vote. I need you to go out and vote. It is your right to exercise your right to vote. And so I'm encouraging everyone who can to go out and vote on Tuesday, August the 1st. For Tracy Andrews.
Well said. Thank you for taking the time.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you for revisiting a second time. I think it's time well spent. We encourage our viewers to become educated, informed voters. We all too often tell people to register to vote and to get out there and vote without giving them the tools necessary
Yes.
to make an informed decision. And we just think that regardless of how many people in any particular race, it's very important that people get the opportunity to meet them, if not in person, at least virtually by our show, and to be able to hear those forums between candidates, to be able to hear that exchange of ideas. So at the end of the day, this is our small way of giving back, but we wish you the best.
Thank you.
Moving forward. After the election, as Councilman District or Ward 3 Tracy Andrews, would you consider coming back on a semi-irregular basis and maybe just keeping us up to speed with what's going on with the city?
Yes, sir. Be glad to.
We'd appreciate it, and thanks again.
Thank you.
Our guest today has been Tracy Andrews, currently candidate for Ward 3 City Council person in Chipley, Florida. That election is coming up. We've only got a few short days. We decided to do this at the last minute because we know we have a huge audience and one more opportunity, as we have offered all the candidates, to come on, tell you why, in their own words, you should vote for them. We appreciate your viewership. We do encourage you to register to vote and to exercise that constitutional right and privilege, and this thing that singularly makes us Americans. We'll be right back.